waiting to pass that out, and it's been redirected to the Treasury Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Treasury Minister what the Council of Ministers and Manx Utilities Authority are doing to reduce the impact on electricity customers of recent increases in the wholesale price of gas. How much this will cost the taxpayers, what the impact will be on government debt, and if we make a statement.
Thank you. All the Treasury Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to repeat what I said in the other place in February in response to a question from the Honourable Member, Mr. Moorhouse, save to say that an additional £750,000 has already been paid to support families with the rising cost of gas and other fuels impacting on home heating. The total amount paid via the 3 winter bonus schemes this year is approximately £1.5 million. Mr. Speaker, the issue of rising electricity costs along with rising costs of other fuels needs to be considered in the broader context of its impact on the cost of living. As such, Council and Ministers are monitoring the impact of rising energy prices in the context of their impact on inflation and the cost of living, and considering options for supporting those hardest hit. Mr. Speaker, as I've already stated, I will be making a financial statement in Tynwald in April, at which point I hope to outline what the support will look like, the cost of any proposals and their impact on government finances.
Questions, Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the day. In terms of increasing challenges of the most challenged in society, is there a possibility that increased support will be given when that statement is given? And in addition to the specific changes in MUA pricing, should the wealthy, the incredibly profitable companies pay the full price of this increase? Because at the moment we're still supporting all of these people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to preempt what will be stated in the statement in April. We are, of course, looking at what the cost of living actually is and what impact that is having across different types of families, because we have to remember that the cost of living increase will not have the same impact on everyone exactly the same. In terms of the most wealthy paying, Mr. Speaker, I assume what the Honourable Member is referring to is that any support should come from the general taxation route. In relation to that, Mr. Speaker, that would need to be very, very carefully looked at, and the general taxation route doesn't necessarily always raise the substantial amounts that people think that it does.
Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 1st of March, the Treasury Minister advised this place that he was monitoring the financial risk in respect of energy security. On the 2nd of March, the Manx Utilities Authority Chair answered a question to me to say that £5 million had been drawn down from the MUA bond repayment fund in February. Does the Treasury Minister agree with me that perhaps should have been mentioned in the budget in February 2022? Because obviously the Treasury has been managing the Manx Utilities Authority bond repayment fund since 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In relation to that, I think that's more a question for the Chairman of the MUA as to how they decide to fund it. In terms of a drawdown on the fund, my understanding is the MUA was able to do that.
Questions from Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Budget Day, the Chair of the MUA said the cost of absorbing the price increase was already £16 million. What are the additional costs in the last 35 days? I'm sure that given the increasing pressure being put on the Treasury Minister is really up to date on that. And how much money is being allocated to supporting this? Because there are suggestions it could soon be going towards £50 million over the next 12 months each rate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Gas prices have remained highly volatile, so the cost of generation on any given day is dependent on a number of factors, including local electricity demand and market prices, and also plant scheduling. Final costs can't be calculated until settlements are agreed with Manx Utilities suppliers. However, I can advise that based on the 30,521 megawatts per hour of electricity provided to customers in February 2022, additional costs were approximately £33,000 per day higher compared to the original budget for the year, giving an estimated additional cost for 35 days of £1.2 million. This additional cost is being met from Manx Utilities' financial reserves. I refer again to the high volatility of market prices currently being experienced, and as such I would say that it's speculative to suggest that costs could rise to 50 million or more. Manx Utilities and the Treasury are continuing to work together to monitor energy prices and also the implications of that for Manx Utilities and their customers.
So, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Treasury Minister advise then how Treasury himself, the board and council ministers were involved in February 2022 in the decision to draw down £5 million from the bond repayment fund, and also make a statement about how, for instance, the rules around that, as confirmed in the Pink Book in Treasury's budget in February 2022, were complied with. And secondly, on the 1st of March, the Treasury Minister advised that it was very good news that the MUA had spent £16 million of reserves, and it turns out now of money that was being used to pay off for future generations the bond for electricity companies. He called that hedging gains. It turns out it wasn't hedging gains, it was the use of reserves. Does the Treasury Minister now think that's very good news? And also, does the Treasury Minister agree that it was right that more than half of that should have gone to non-domestic customers, i.e. the large electricity users like data centres, for instance?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not chairman of the MUA, so I'm not going to start as Treasury Minister trying to dictate the policy of the MUA. The MUA, as a statutory board, decides what it believes is in the best interests of their business and acts accordingly. In relation to it being good news, I still do believe it's very good news that the MUA has been able to insulate customers by that amount, which otherwise, if it had not been done, that cost would have passed on to the consumer. In relation to the bond repayment fund, my understanding is that all appropriate measures in terms of conversations with Treasury in order for the MUA to be able to undertake that were undertaken.
Final supplementary, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The MUA has taken a valiant role of actually protecting us all from these price increases to a certain extent. I know there's a price increase next week and then one later in the year, but in terms of the role of the MUA, is the Treasury happy that they're taking on this role of protecting the customer rather than dealing with the business model as it has traditionally been? And should Social Security actually be looking at supporting those in most need, and the MUA focus on getting the cheapest prices to all customers? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The MUA, in order as a business model to operate, required 30% increase. 30% increase is coming forward, and it's just in conversations with council and ministers. It has been agreed that it be done as a staged approach, so 15% initially, then followed by the 15% in July. So what the MUA required as a business has actually been achieved and will be achieved by the end of July. Just to point out, Mr. Speaker, that one of the things and myths that always goes around is that electricity in the island is more expensive than the UK. Even with the 30% increase, the average tariff will still be below where most of the UK will be in terms of electricity price, and so substantially where it will probably be by the end of 2022. But in terms of their business and their duties to the business, the 30% increase required will come forward. We've asked, and the MUA have agreed, for the increase to be staged in order that we can assess the impact on households and bring forward such support. In relation to the benefits system, Mr. Speaker, again, I'm not going to preempt anything I may say in another place in April, but we do have to recognise that there are some limitations to the benefits system as well, and there can be people who fall through the net. It's not just those on benefits who are going to be squeezed by the cost of living. There is, I don't particularly like the phrase of the squeezed middle, Mr. Speaker, but that particular section as well that won't necessarily fall within the benefit system as it currently stands. So our examination has to be much wider than just looking at those that currently fall within the benefit system.
Return to our